Error. Electricity in line. Override accepted. Infusion initiated.
Welcome to the INS Infusion Room, the official podcast of the Infusion Nurses Society. In this podcast, we explore all things infusion therapy through a real-life conversation, covering the latest trends, new research, evolving standards, and key industry insights. Whether you're an experienced infusion nurse or new to the field, we aim to keep you informed and empowered with the knowledge to stay at the forefront of the profession. My name's Derek, and I'm your host. Let's dive in. All right, welcome to episode 1 of season 1 for the INS Infusion Room. My name's Derek and I'm the host. And today we have Don Berndt with us, who is also a host. Hey, Don, thanks for joining us today.
Well, you are entirely welcome, Derek. It is my pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. So today's episode is titled Passing the Baton. And brought to you by the Infusion Nurses Society. That's our bag of knowledge today that we're infusing. All right, Dawn, you want to tell the listeners of your special announcement?
I sure do. Well, I am so happy to pass the baton today to Derek Fox. He is the new host of the INS Infusion Room. I know that I've been quiet for a while, so you haven't heard my voice often. I'm so happy that you get to hear me and now even see me today. But I am planning retirement. So earlier this year in May, I gave a 1-year notice to the leadership at INS that I would be retiring in 2025. So that plan is underway. And as work has gotten busy over the past few years in the publications department, for which I am the editor-in-chief right now, I have not been able to conduct podcasts. So we've hired Derek on at INS. And tell me, how long ago was it, Derek, that you were hired?
Since July. So
July.
It's been almost 6 months. It's went really quick so far.
Derek has gone through his first 6 months. This means that he is ready. He is ready. So the plan that we had for him, in addition to his work in the education department, was to take over the podcasting. So I am so thrilled that he is able to do this. And you can see he is ready to go. And I'm here today to talk about the change that's coming and maybe do a little bit of reminiscing from some podcasts from the past. And then I'm really curious to know what kind of ideas Derek has for the future, because I know he's got some things in his bag to tell us, some ideas that he has for the podcast. And I know that this is going to be an intriguing show for you to click in.
It's been quite the adjustment so far. Very exciting, but I'm super excited to be with the INS team and to push forward with the podcast. So,
wow.
Dawn, let's talk a little bit about your legacy.
My legacy.
It's a big one. Big shoes to fill for sure.
Well, first of all, let's make certain that how far back you want me to go, because you know I'm nearing retirement. So there's a long story here. So you can shorten it up. Should we just stay with the INS years, or should we go back farther?
Let's do a little summary leading up to INS, how you got into INS, and
oh, sure.
How does a nurse become an editor-in-chief? That's interesting to me.
Well, that's interesting to me as well. So the only way I can describe my professional career is that I've had the opportunity to do so many things and almost every single thing that I've wanted to do. So I definitely have been a bedside nurse. I definitely have worked most of the years in nursing in infusion therapy in some form or another. That doesn't dismiss the years that I worked in outpatient surgery, preparing people for surgery, monitoring them, getting them discharged, all of those things. I worked for the Red Cross many, many years ago. I was a regional training center expert. So I trained a 5-state region. That was kind of fun too. And I worked for the Red Cross during the 911 event. And that was when we were doing all kinds of things. We thought there were going to be so many survivors, and there was a lot of blood being drawn, and those were tough times. That really marks my part in history of where I was, what I was doing at the time, and my contribution during that very difficult period. But most of my life as a nurse has been working at UW Hospital and Clinics in University of Wisconsin, in Madison, Wisconsin. After I retired from there, now you're going to hear some key words here, retired. Retired for me means I never stopped working because I transitioned to something else. So after I retired from University Hospital and Clinics, I started working full-time for INS, and it was, for me, the best of all things.
Did you intend to retire at that time, for real retire?
I don't know for sure, but I am so thankful that since 2018, I've been working for INS, and I started out in the education department. Marlene Steinheiser and I had the opportunity we developed quite a few of our programs, our conference work, the FIT program, the Fundamentals of Infusion Therapy. We worked on so many things together, and we really plowed side by side for about a year and a half. And then there came the opportunity for me to manage the publications department and later to be the director of the publications department. And then when Mary Alexander retired, I was appointed the role of editor-in-chief. So when you ask, like, how does a nurse become that, instead of inserting catheters in people's arms and bodies or doing anything related to infusion nursing or doing the management portion of that, all of a sudden here I am working with words and documents and articles and authors all over the world. How does that happen? And it really is because of the opportunities that are available in an organization like INS. INS has a very keen ability of taking things that we're good at, that we're kind of gifted at, that we have an aptitude for, and making room for us to grow into that work. And I can tell you, when I get a rough draft of something, that's just the best day to do all of the things and stuff. I've handled a lot of rough drafts over the years, not just at INS, but in other works. So I guess I could also say that some of my educational background and preparation made it possible for me to be both in the education position and in a leadership role.
It's very unique role, and you've served it very well.
Well, thank you.
I know it's very surreal for me seeing the work that you've done as a member of INS for years, now working beside you and soon to take over some of the roles that you were responsible for is truly a high honor. So it's a wonderful thing to see your career and the opportunities that you had within it. So thank you. Thank you for the specialty, and thank you from
You're welcome. And you just bring a lot of things. As we're talking, I'm kind of thinking, going down memory lane all by myself here.
It's easy to do. I'm sure there's lots of memories. So do you have talk to me a little bit about, we talked about your editor-in-chief role and how you moved into publications. At what point did you take over the podcast, and how'd that come about?
That was actually part of my job description when I was hired.
Okay.
And it was so funny because it was explained to me like, well, you know how to have a conversation with someone, right? Well, the only thing that's different about that is that you're going to be recording that conversation. And when I first started out, this just seems so archaic to say it out loud, but I'm going to. We actually had that conversation over a telephone line, over a landline. And we recorded through that landline. So the recording, the quality of the audio was just tragic. It was, one time I was interviewing someone, and I think we described it. It sounded like a gorilla tromping through the woods, chomping on celery. It was so crazy. And the person who was editing that, it was like a single track with both of our voices on it. And the best they could do is just to kind of squeeze some of that sound down every once in a while. And the name of the podcast when I first started was Talking in Vain. And my predecessor had that title. And I think INS had done some research and had done some polls and got some professional advice. And Talking in Vain was the title that came up. And there's a little bit of a catch there. It's kind of catchy a little bit. But there was something about that always kind of bothered me because I didn't want to be talking in a useless way or in a vain way either. So I really got into podcasts. I went to a huge podcast conference. Thousands of people were there. And this conference was so different than many of the nursing conferences I've ever gone to because, number one, there were thousands of people. The registration night, like Friday night, it was a tremendous, tremendous room where we were overflowed out into the entryway and everything. But there were people in line, and there was, 10, 24 lines or something of you go by your last name. And we stood there for hours in line. And it was the happiest, most crazy bunch of people. We had hors d'oeuvres and we were standing there and nobody seemed to care that we were waiting in line. And also at that conference, which is totally different than nursing, there were no beverages served ever. So There wasn't the morning coffee and there wasn't any food that was supplied. It was like all on your own. And the conference was a little bit expensive, but I learned so much. And I interviewed some people about the name that we had. And they were like, oh, let's change that name. Why don't we think about changing that name? And that's when we became the INS Infusion Room, because we all know what an infusion room is. And of course, we have to put INS on there for branding. And that was the beginning of that story.
So that's where the title.
That's where the title came from.
That's where it all came from.
Yeah.
Was it a recommendation from someone there? The INS Infusion Room?
Actually, the title came to me, but I was asking I interviewed people with. We had so many people we could talk to and visit with, and I would ask them, get their reaction to the title that we had at that time. And it was neither good or bad, but they always kind of like, well, what does that mean? What does it mean? They were like, I don't know enough about what your podcast is about based on the title you have. So anyway, that started that amount of change. But other things that were different, then we changed from those telephone conversations, oh my goodness, to we started getting some recording devices. And then we quickly moved on to digital programs because that's the only way that you can record. And I had a program where we could record up to 4 people and we had 4 tracks and we could insert music and cut things in and out, the things that we have to remove when somebody says, hey, wait a minute, I want to say that again. And they count down 3, 2, 1. And then you start all over and then you cut that space out. And so anyway, we got a little bit more sophisticated with some sound and with some editing capabilities, some recording capabilities. I know one of the things that would happen is technology is always very challenging. So if people were using, it depends on the type of computer that you like to use, whether it's a PC or an Apple product, or if a phone isn't, you could actually record from a cell phone. So people would have trouble bridging over to our recording device that's out there somewhere in the world. And I can remember this one guy who was just having so much trouble. And we could see each other like we can right now. It was the green room. Like we could talk to each other and see each other. We just weren't recording video. And we finally got him in. We got him into the studio. And one of the things that he said to me was, he said, boy, Don, I don't know who you are, but you could talk a person off a ledge. It was like, he liked the tone of my voice, apparently. But a lot of times I had to stay with people and kind of talk them through, okay, like I'm going to send you a new link. I'm going to, whatever it took until we both reached the green room, pressed record, and away we would go and have that conversation, and everything went great after that.
That's wonderful.
One of my favorite podcasts was one that I did early on. And this was one of the over how many episodes in total? Oh, I have no idea. I can't remember.
It's a lot.
Sometimes I used to do 2 per month, sometimes more than 2 per month, and then sometimes only 1 per month. So over the years, it's been quite a few. But one of my favorite ones was a conversation that I had with Marcus Engel, ENGEL. E-L, Marcus Engel. He's a gentleman who has written some books. And so my first encounter with him was because I received the book. Let me see, what's the title of it here? I have a few of his titles over here on my screen. The title is I'm Here. It's about a young man who goes to college and he has a terrible, terrible accident. And the accident just cost him so much. It caused a lot of physical damage. He lost his eyesight, but he describes his experience in the hospital where he's just a young, very vital man who has lost his capabilities. And not only that, he can't see. He only knows that he's in pain. He doesn't know much about what has transpired. But a nurse sat beside him, and I think she held his hand often, and she was there with him through the night, and she just said, I'm here. I am here. If you can think about someone who's about 19, 20 years old, they probably haven't had many experiences with healthcare. And the broken bones and the damage that he had a lot of facial damage and things too. The pain that he went through, he was experiencing this very much as a novice patient. Later, after he was, more weeks into his recovery, there was someone who used to come in and talk to him to put in an IV. And she would call him Meat Hook because he had these great big hands. I think, if I remember right, he was an athlete and he had these great big hands. And she said, boy, she would compliment him on his veins. And she would treat him not like a patient in the bed, but like the 19 or 20-year-old man that he was, and put his IV in. And so that story, it impacted me when I read it. And then I had the opportunity to interview him. And it was just very moving for me. Marcus Engel he speaks. He can come to conferences and speaks. He has some other books. He has another book. He sent me, after I talked to him, he sent me some other complimentary editions of his books. And one of them is The Other End of the Stethoscope. And I would highly recommend that read as well. It's always good for clinicians, those who work with patients, to put themselves in that perspective.
It's more than just the outcome sometimes. It's the experience that goes along with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So tell me what's been your biggest challenge within your career, if you don't mind sharing.
In my career?
I'm really interested. Career or with INS.
I don't think about life that way. I don't think about the challenges. I mean, I know that there are times where there's a lot of work, hours and hours and hours of work, and where we just have times where you're kind of locked in or sequestered with a volume of work because of deadlines or due dates. And those are the things that we just have to work through. That I see as like a short-term thing. It's kind of disruptive from, family life and things like that. But it's for a short term, and then you go on, and it's all better after that. So that, I would say, it has always been a challenge, but I've never had a job where there weren't those experiences where everybody has to knuckle down and just get things done and do what it takes to make that happen. And at the same time, there's a really good feeling that comes with it, because the accountability that comes with being able to be the group, the team that pulls through is very satisfying. It's very good. Again, you don't want it to go on forever, and you don't want it to go on for the rest of your career. But, isn't it like that in family life, in our personal life as well? If you've ever had infants, if you've ever had, I'm that sandwich group where, we have a mom who is nearing end of life, and then we've got kids, and then maybe then the grandkids too. And you have this situation where these people up here need us and these people down here need us. And we're that one in the middle who is doing everything we can to keep all of those ends together.
I think sometimes going through those situations, you think, am I going to get through this? And you look back and wonder how you did. But, within any challenges, both personal and career, we grow so much as humans and really move to that next level to be able to achieve more.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're a prime example of that.
Well, sometimes when I look back, I always think of things that I could have done better and I wish I had, but that's what the future is for.
That's right.
So, Derek, I have been a pretty good sport here, letting you ask me questions and ask about my retirement and the podcasting and my work as a nurse over the years. I'm going to put you on deck now. First of all, I am really curious to know what you're going to do with the INS Infusion Room. What are your projections? What do you plan? What are you hoping for?
What I'm hoping for, that's a really great question. Going through and seeing the history of the INS Infusion Room, I think initially we were thinking, well, with a new host, maybe it needs to come a new name. We didn't find that to be true. The INS Infusion Room was very, very well respected, already established, and it really held true to what we wanted to do moving forward. But I think you've captured a lot of the essence of what I think of when I think of a podcast, especially in a professional stance. Where my points come from is really focused on how can we take scary topics, intimidating topics, confusing topics, and turn them into real life conversations to make it more relatable. And I think that's something that you can really achieve with the podcast. So to answer your question, I think it's going to be very similar, and our listeners can really expect a lot of the same things. We're going to talk about industry standards. We're going to be hearing from industry leaders. We're going to be talking about various trends and maybe even some nursing topics in general. But overall, everything geared towards infusion therapy to really give our listeners that extra piece of knowledge and a different perspective, as opposed to reading a research paper or an article. They're wonderful things. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes individuals need a little bit more and better understanding of the how, the why, and maybe the behind the scenes to give a better look or to give it some inspiration to move the needle within the infusion world.
Yeah. So my next question for you is, how are you going to promote the infusion room? Podcasting is a very challenging field, and I'm going to use your word that you used with me. We got to get the word out. So how are you going to do that?
As you can see, we have some visuals now. Our listeners will be able to access both the visual component and the audio, but also moving into the social media world and really focused on micro-learning and taking a lot of our segments and putting that into reels within social media.
Yeah. So how often are you going to produce a podcast, and how often can you tell our listeners about what time it's going to be released? Do they expect a regular day of the month that you're going to do that? How's that going to go?
So every other Tuesday is going to be the release date. So Tuesday is our day, our first episode, which is right now.
All you people out there get to have this episode first.
So if you're listening to this, you'll know that it dropped on January 14th, and then marching out every 2 weeks thereafter, you can expect a new episode. Really exciting episodes upcoming. I don't want to give away too much, but lots of different perspectives, global perspectives, some new work that's being done and published on. So lots of really great guests lined up, and I'm super excited to introduce them to our audience.
Oh boy, that you have a really rigorous schedule planned, but for listeners, this is so wonderful because they're going to stay connected and they are going to wait for Tuesdays. When that podcast comes out, they're going to pounce on it. So that's so good.
And then on our off weeks, you can expect to see social media reels come through. Don't want to give too much away on that either. But simultaneously, when we launch the podcast, which is now, you'll be seeing social media reels talking about standards of practice and application, little segments of micro-learning.
Okay. Well, this is so good. I'm excited, and I am so thrilled that podcasts are back. I'm excited that you're the one who's doing them. I enjoyed it for so long, and now I am so excited to have someone else pick up that baton and run with it.
When like you talked about when you interviewed, they told you that that would be part of your job description. I had a very similar interview. And when they had mentioned it, I thought, that's very intriguing. We'll see how the course runs. But it was intriguing, but also a little nerve-wracking. I'm not going to lie. Coming in with no podcasting experience. I had listened to many podcasts, but now being a podcast host for the Infusion Nurses Society. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely amazing.
Well, there are limitless people out there who are experts in their field, who have something to tell us, who can inform us, guests that are just waiting to tell their story. And it is truly a conversation, and it's a conversation worth listening to, and it's a conversation worth having.
Very good. I think it's a wonderful way to end our episode, Dawn. I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you the honors here.
This is Dawn Berndt, Director of Publications and Editor of the Journal of Infusion Nursing, along with Derek Fox, signing off for the INS Infusion Room.
Infusion complete.